Let's talk about bacteriophage. This is probably the stupidest GIF I am ever going to put up there, but yeah, I don't know. It's basically the phage replication cycle in about, what, 5 seconds? Yeah. Can't beat it. Anyway, let's talk phage, and we're going to start out by not talking about phage, and then we're going to jump into it. So we'll start out with virus taxonomy. So, what does this mean? If we're talking about what viruses are, we got to talk about how people group viruses, because that's just a nice way to get a look at everything, like the complete inventory of all the viruses that are out there. So this is the paper at the top. I'm circling it with my mouse, where they set up the current way of sort of cataloging all the viruses and organizing them. And it basically makes a tree of viral life, which is really neat. There are 15 official ranks in there, which is actually more than you get in terms of official ranks than you have in the normal classification system. You know, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, like that. The ranks just fit in between, and instead of domains, we have realms. And it says there's one in 2019, but actually now there are 6 different realms of viruses. And they are actually totally separate, whereas all the domains of life actually have the same genes and can be connected to make the same tree. The 6 realms of viruses and virus-like things cannot be connected. They do not share a common ancestor as far as we can tell. They are just 6 separate things that all exist and are kind of like what we think of as viruses in some way. Yeah, interesting? Yeah, I think so. So if you want to read that paper, it goes through the ranks and kind of why they made those ranks. Here is an example, and this is from a different paper, and the version in that paper actually had to be updated because they added more of those ranks in between since this came out, or rather some of those ranks didn't have names, and we now have names to put in. So on this side, we have humans. Yeah, and on this side, we have coronaviruses. And specifically, we're trying to get to SARS-CoV-2. This is from the paper where we published the name for SARS-CoV-2. So we're going to start out, if we're human, where you start out in domain eukaryota, and for viruses, we're going to have a realm instead. And then we're going to go to animals, chordates, vertebrates, primates, hominids, hominids like us, genus Homo, which is just humans and a couple other very human-like creatures, and then Homo sapiens. And then within this group, we have a bunch of individuals. We each have our own, DNA. And so each of us is not our own species. We're all part of a group, which we call a species. And it works the same way for viruses. So there are a bunch of little things like isolates. But basically, here we go. Let's go down the ranks. So riboviria, you can find all these ranks on the ICTV website, International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses. You can kind of browse through them and find your way either down to a virus species or from a virus species back up to a virus realm. And that's as high as it goes. So riboviria contain all the RNA viruses, that is, viruses with an RNA genome. Now, you're probably saying, well, what about viruses that are sometimes RNA and sometimes DNA and maybe switch back and forth? Good question. We consider the genome of a virus to be the thing that is transmitted inside the virion from one cell to another. So whatever gets packaged in the virion is the thing that we're going to call the genome. Yeah. So that makes it a little simpler. So riboviria have viruses that have RNA inside. All of them, yeah, whether or not it turns into DNA later. OrthoRNA viridae, or orthornaviridae, I guess we should say that. These are going to be viruses that start as RNA and end as RNA and never turn into DNA. So what we would call RNA viruses. Of these, your RNA can be forward, which we call positive strand, or it can be reverse. Actually, those are backwards here. Forward, positive strand, or reverse, negative strand. And PZOO is like abbreviating positive strand, PS, and then you put the appropriate ending on there. And so, yeah, that's fine. And then inside of that group, there is another group that contains 3 types of viruses. picorna-like viruses, related to common colds and polio. Nidoviruses, related to like SARS, the COVID virus, although I don't say that. It's SARS-CoV-2. That's the proper name of the virus. COVID is the disease. It's like a soybean model like Sobeli viruses. Anyway, within those, we have the Nidoviralis, which is the big group that's going to contain coronaviruses and things that are like coronaviruses but in various invertebrates, for example, like jellyfish and stuff get corona-like viruses, insects. They're not exactly the same, but they have more in common with coronaviruses than anything else, so they need a place. That's their place. Inside of that, we have the Cornidovirinii, which contain coronaviruses and things that are pretty close to coronaviruses, but not exactly the same. They have names. You probably haven't heard of them. There's no point in me saying them. Then we get into the Coronaviridae. Everything inside that group is what we call a coronavirus. So it's actually a family, and you can tell because it ends in viridae. And if you go back a slide, you can see, oh, look, the ending for family is going to be viridae. So the way you make these taxonomic ranks is by putting a word on and then adding the appropriate ending, and then you have your new rank. Yeah, it's as easy as that. And then you have to argue about it with a committee. That's maybe the hard part. Orthocoronavirinae, they happen to all infect vertebrate animals. Beta coronaviruses have like mouse coronavirus and bovine coronavirus, and there's a couple human coronaviruses, but also SARS and MERS coronavirus is one you may not have heard of, but it's really bad. It's like SARS on steroids. Sarbecovirus are things that are very closely related. That's a subgenus, so we're down here. And then there's the species, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. And that's actually the same species for original SARS from 2003 and SARS today, SARS-CoV-2, and all the bat viruses that fit in between those. And there are thousands of those that we know now. And then inside of that, you can say, well, I caught an Omicron, a couple months ago. And we say, oh, okay, that's fine. Omicron is a variant, like a group. These are not formal taxonomic ranks anymore. We're outside of taxonomy, but we're inside of, groups that still have some sort of meaning. And so within that, maybe you'd say you've got a particular Omicron variant called XBB 1.16, which there's a lot of that going around, although by the time you watch this, there's probably going to be a new variant. And then from those, we would have particular isolates, which is from a person on a day, and it's a particular slight variant. And it'll be somewhere within this umbrella of XBB 1.16. But essentially, you pull a virus, even if it's the same strain out of two people, it will have a couple of mutations. It'll have a couple of differences. And you're not ever going to get exactly the same virus twice now these days. So there we go. That's our little taxonomy note out of the way. And now we'll go on to phage time. So see you for that video next.